Gravel sprayed like shrapnel as I slammed the truck door, heart hammering against my ribs. Through the salt-crusted window of what was supposed to be my property, two men were staring back at me, shirtless, tattooed, and furious. One raised his middle finger, the other cracked his knuckles. "You got 3 seconds to get off Karen's property before I make you," the larger one bellowed, stepping onto the porch I'd bought with my own goddamn money. His voice carried that special kind of rage that comes from someone who's never been told no. My business partner Travis grabbed my arm. "Declan, maybe we should—" "Karen's property?" I cut him off, my voice climbing. "I have the deed. I have the county records. This house is mine." The tall one with the patchy beard laughed, a wet, phlegmy sound. "Karen says this whole stretch belongs to the HOA. Says you're some con artist from Atlanta trying to steal community land." He spat into the sand near my boots. "Now get the hell out before we throw you out." The door slammed so hard a chunk of blue paint flaked off and spiraled to the ground. I stood there, fists clenched, blood roaring in my ears, staring at that door like I could set it on fire with my mind. 3 months of planning. $42,000. Every permit filed correctly. Every regulation followed. And now 2 squatters and some woman named Karen were treating me like I was the criminal. Travis whispered, "This is insane. This is actually insane." I pulled out my phone, fingers trembling with fury. It's about to get a lot worse for them. The moment I rolled onto Pelican Bay Drive 3 weeks earlier, I'd felt that familiar hum of possibility. I'd spent months analyzing satellite images, tax records, coastal zoning maps, and archived deed transfers. The property listing had shown a weather-beaten relic sagging into the South Carolina dunes, perfect for demolition and rebirth. My vision was simple: an intimate 8-room boutique hotel called the Dunes Edge, built to disappear into the landscape like it had always been there. But when I first stepped onto that pale, wind-polished driveway in late September 2025, something felt wrong. The house didn't match the photos at all. The listing from June had shown gray boards peeling like sunburned skin, and a porch that tilted so dramatically it looked ready to slide into the Atlantic. But now the siding gleamed in aggressive cobalt blue. The porch had fresh railings. Through the front window, I could see a flat-screen TV playing what looked like a football game. Travis hopped out of the passenger seat and frowned. "This isn't what you showed me." "No," I said slowly, "it's not." Someone had poured money into this place. Recent money. You don't paint and renovate a house you're about to lose unless you think it belongs to you. Or unless someone told you it does. We approached cautiously, crunching over beer cans half buried in sand. Dovi 5 at Wanderos, point 5 I wonder why Babus yes, Pasio, Fodder. Cigarette smoke leaked through window cracks. The second I knocked, the TV volume dropped and heavy boots approached. The door swung open. 2 men stood there like they'd been cast for a reality show about swamp dwelling. One was tall and wiry with a beard that looked like it had survived several bar fights. The other was thick-necked, shirtless, his arms a canvas of faded tattoos and fresh sunburn. Both stared at me like I'd just insulted their mother. "What?" the tall one grunted. "I'm Declan Sawyer," I said, keeping my voice level. "I'm the property owner. I need to know why you're here." That got a laugh from the shirtless one. "Owner? Yeah, right. We rent this place from Karen. So you can turn your fancy ass around and leave, pretty boy." Travis blinked so hard I thought he might faint. "Karen?" he whispered. Before I could respond, the shorter man shoved his weight forward and slammed the door in my face. The wood cracked like a gunshot. For a moment, I just stood there, letting the absurdity wash over me. Then the shock burned off, replaced by cold, precise focus. The kind that only shows up when someone tries to play you for a fool. I stepped back and dialed the sheriff's office. The deputy arrived faster than expected, a lean black woman named Officer Simmons with sharp eyes and zero patience for nonsense. She reviewed my documents right there on her cruiser hood. Signed deed, tax receipts, title insurance, County parcel confirmation. Everything matched. Then she knocked on the door with the authority of someone who could ruin your entire week. The men exploded out, shouting before she even finished her announcement. Something about tenant rights, illegal seizure, and how this rich clown was trying to steal what belonged to Karen by ancestral right. Officer Simmons didn't argue. She simply informed them they were trespassing on private property and needed to vacate immediately. Things escalated fast. The tall one flailed his arms, screaming that Karen had documents proving the HOA owned the entire shoreline and that I was a city slicker scam artist. Simmons didn't even blink. She guided each man down the porch steps, firm but controlled, ignoring their protest about rights they didn't have. 20 minutes later, both were in the back of a second cruiser, still screaming about Karen like she was some kind of deity. When the deputies finally drove away, leaving the property eerily silent, I stood in the doorway and looked inside. The furniture was mismatched but new. A half-finished Budweiser sat sweating on the counter. Someone had tried to make this place home, without my permission, without the county's permission, without reality's permission. Travis finally spoke. I think we just walked into something bigger than a renovation. He wasn't wrong. As I stood in that doorway staring at the living room someone else had staged inside my property, a single thought clicked into place. Someone was about to have the worst week of their life, and it wasn't me. I returned the next morning, just after sunrise, hoping to reclaim some sense of control before the madness resumed. The house was quiet now, stripped of its intruders, but unease still lingered like the ghost of a bad decision. Travis was due at noon, but I wanted time alone to walk the perimeter and strategize. I'd barely taken 5 steps into the front yard when I heard tires crunching sand and gravel. A spotless white Lexus RX rolled up with all the subtlety of a Secret Service convoy. It parked diagonally, half on my driveway, half in the brush, as if the concept of boundaries was a suggestion rather than a rule. The door opened and out stepped a woman in her late 50s wearing a coral blazer, cream slacks and wedge sandals far too pristine for this environment. Blonde bob, oversized sunglasses perched like a tiara, and a leather-bound clipboard hugged to her chest like it contained nuclear launch codes. She didn't introduce herself. Of course not. She just started talking. You must be the one who thinks he bought this place, she said, walking straight past me like I was lawn furniture. I blinked. Good morning to you too. I'm Karen Hudson, she announced, president of the Pelican Bay Homeowners Association. She said it like she was announcing a royal title. I let her talk. She clearly preferred monologues. This property, she continued, circling the porch like a home inspector on cocaine, was never meant to be sold. It was historically part of our HOA, but it slipped through the cracks during the 2001 boundary revision. The lot was misclassified, and you, unfortunately, exploited that error. I almost laughed. I didn't exploit anything. I bought a property listed by the county with full records, legal history, and verified tax identification. I have signed sale documents, digital and hard copies. Karen shook her head like I was a child who just insisted the sky was green. Oh, I've seen your little online registry printout, but our community follows a different system. We honor the original parcel boundaries from the 1994 Coastal Preservation Plan. That house, this entire stretch, was never supposed to be separate from us. She spoke in that condescending HOA dialect that always dances around lawsuits but drips with implied threat. Your planned development, she continued, violates numerous neighborhood aesthetic standards, beach access principles, and maritime wind corridor protections. Maritime wind corridor protections? I echoed, confused and increasingly entertained. Don't mock what you clearly don't understand, she snapped. You've already erected a temporary construction fence without HOA visual harmony approval. That must be reviewed and likely removed. I leaned against the railing she was inspecting so critically. There is no review because there is no jurisdiction. This land isn't part of your HOA. It hasn't been since 2001. Your board's authority ends 3 lots back. This house is mine. The land is mine, the fence is legal, and if you keep trying to intimidate me, I'll involve the county again. Karen didn't flinch. That attitude isn't going to make you any friends around here. I'm not here to make friends, I said. I'm here to build something. Dazo befait feet. Jaisa? Wait up. Yeah, I. Her smile thinned into a calculated line. We'll see how far that attitude gets you. She handed me a manila envelope as she turned to leave. Inside 23 printed pages, a grainy scan of a 1994 parcel diagram, a list of community cohesion clauses, and an unsigned letter threatening community action if I didn't comply with their visual and structural alignment standards. No stamps, no signatures, just threat cosplay. As her SUV reversed down the driveway, she rolled down the window. You may have fooled the county, but you haven't fooled me. You're not welcome here. I gave her a lazy wave. That's funny, because I actually own the place. She sped off, tires spitting sand. I stood there, envelope in hand, the morning sun painting her retreating vehicle in golden light. Travis arrived an hour later and found me pouring coffee on the porch. You look like you just watched a train wreck in slow motion, he said. Worse, I replied. I met the HOA president. He whistled low. That bad? She brought a fake map, invented zoning language, and a deep belief that reality is optional if she says it with enough confidence. Travis frowned. Is this going to get messy? I sipped my coffee and looked out toward the dunes. Oh, it's already a goddamn war. A week later, a crisp white envelope arrived from the Charleston County Superior Court, stamped and sealed like a letter from royalty. Inside, a civil lawsuit. Karen Hudson, representing the Pelican Bay Homeowners Association, was suing me on 3 counts, claiming the sale was invalid due to historic jurisdictional boundary error, that my fence violated community ordinances, and that I was unlawfully attempting to develop HOA-protected land. I read through it twice, then once more aloud, just to make sure it wasn't some elaborate HOA-themed performance art. Travis was halfway through lunch when I told him. She's actually suing you? He choked, nearly launching a fork across the table. She lost with the cops, so she's trying to win in court. She thinks a decades-old beach zoning sketch gives her more authority than the county recorder's office, I muttered, flipping to the last page. She's even trying to get an injunction to stop construction. I called my attorney that afternoon, Diane Reyes, a legal pit bull who'd spent the last 15 years dismantling entitlement like Karen's for sport. She was amused, then irritated, then deeply invested. Let me guess, she said. Karen's evidence includes a photocopied map from the Clinton administration, a bylaws sheet printed in Comic Sans, and a self-written affidavit signed only by her. Close, I replied. The Comic Sans might be Helvetica. She chuckled. We'll burn this down in 2 hearings. The pre-trial motions moved fast. Diane filed to dismiss based on lack of jurisdiction, invalid standing, and improperly sourced evidence. But Karen had money, time, and an HOA-funded lawyer who kept puffing up the case with community affidavits and pseudo-historical claims. They even tried to introduce local oral tradition, suggesting the land had always been used by residents for beach access and summer gatherings. I suppose next they'd submit a child's crayon drawing as proof of spiritual ownership. The first court appearance was surreal. Karen arrived dressed like she was attending a yacht club arbitration, white gloves, pearl earrings, a pink binder with color-coded tabs. She smiled like this was a game she'd already won. This world had a smarted. Search away for specific. Search work 5 6 what I has pay. The judge thankfully was all business. A no-nonsense woman named Judge Underwood who'd clearly heard every flavor of coastal land drama imaginable. She listened to both sides carefully, giving Karen's lawyer just enough rope to embarrass himself. when he cited a 1994 zoning appendix as proof the parcel should never have been released from HOA jurisdiction, she raised an eyebrow. And was that map ever updated to reflect actual land sales and recorded deeds in the 30 years following? He sputtered. She turned to Diane. Your client has all the correct filings? Diane handed over the originals with practiced ease. Certified sale documents, tax ID confirmations, current title report, and confirmation of non-HOA status from the county land office. Karen looked like she'd swallowed battery acid. The hearing stretched over 2 weeks. Karen pulled out every petty trick imaginable. She tried to get me cited for unlicensed construction. Permits were already filed. Claimed environmental harm to nearby dunes. We had pre-approval from the Coastal Impact Board. Even accused me of architectural aggression, whatever the hell that meant. But Diane dismantled every argument like a demolition team with a checklist. One by one, the claims crumbled under the weight of actual law. The final ruling came on a rainy Thursday in late October. The courtroom was half empty except for a few HOA board members clutching branded tote bags like they were at a church bake sale. Judge Underwood didn't mince words. All claims by the plaintiff are denied. The court recognizes the defendant, Mr. Sawyer, as the sole lawful owner of the property in question. Furthermore, the plaintiff's actions constitute a pattern of bad faith legal escalation without foundation. Karen turned ghost pale. I could see her blinking in disbelief, as if her entire worldview, built on rules, control, and fear, had just fractured under fluorescent courtroom lights. But the real kicker, the judge added a personal note in her closing. Let this serve as a reminder that property law is not subject to nostalgia. I wanted to stand up and applaud. Outside the courthouse, Diane patted my shoulder. She's not done. People like her rarely go quiet after one loss. I'm counting on it, I replied, because now I knew what I was really dealing with, and the next round wouldn't be in a courtroom. The judge's gavel hadn't even cooled before the retaliation began. Construction resumed the day after the ruling. My crew returned to find the temporary gate unlatched, one of the toolboxes opened, and the generator unplugged. At first, we figured someone forgot to secure things properly. But by the third morning, when someone had jammed chewing gum into the padlock and snapped off the handle of the water spigot, we knew it wasn't coincidence. It was a message. A petty kindergarten-level message, but a message all the same. I doubled security immediately. Cameras went up at every corner, motion-triggered, infrared, cloud-synced. I hired a night guard, Larry, a semi-retired ex-Marine with a pit bull named Hank, who looked like he ate trespassers for breakfast. Still, it wasn't enough to stop what came next. 05 Sami Theobovius Feed. Kadabo Wife Paiwan. Dewa Fee Vite. One Monday morning, Travis called me before I even reached the site. You're going to want to see this in person, he said grimly. When I pulled in, I saw it. The wellhead we'd been preparing for secondary filtration was completely ruined. Someone had poured what looked like quickset concrete straight down the shaft. The pump motor was fried. The casing was shattered. One of the crew stood nearby holding a wrench like he wanted to hit something that could bleed. Then the wire cutting started. Overnight, 3 security cameras went dark. We traced the wires back and found them surgically sliced, buried back under the sand like someone thought they were clever. On the same day, the wooden privacy fence got tagged in red spray paint. Leave Parasite. Blocky, angry letters that bled down the slats. That week, HOA residents, real residents, started receiving letters printed on HOA letterhead, sealed and dropped in mailboxes. The content: a fabricated alert that my development posed ecological risks to local wildlife and might cause sand destabilization, whatever the hell that meant. Some residents forwarded me copies. Others, more concerned, actually showed up at my gate asking if I was building a party complex. At first, I tried to laugh it off, but when I saw the article in the Pelican Bay Coastal News titled "Outsider Threatens Beloved Historic Beachfront," complete with a blurry photo of me standing by a dumpster mid-sentence, I stopped laughing. I knew exactly whose fingerprints were all over this PR sewage. Karen was launching a full-fledged guerrilla campaign. She'd lost in court, so she was moving the fight to whispers, sabotage, and community manipulation. A slow burn meant to make me give up, pack up, and vanish. But she made a mistake. She assumed I'd never fight dirty. She thought because I wore clean shirts and filed permits that I didn't know how to track pressure points. I did. We traced the spray paint cans dumped behind the lot, tracked the barcodes to a hardware store 2 towns over. One of the cashiers confirmed a blonde woman in a coral jacket bought them, along with nitrile gloves and bolt cutters. Real subtle. Then came the break. Larry called me one night around 2 a.m. He'd caught someone climbing the west fence line. Not a teenager, a grown man, maybe in his 40s. Larry held him at gunpoint until deputies arrived. During interrogation, the guy folded faster than lawn furniture, said he was just supposed to mess up a few things, and when asked who sent him, lady from the HOA, Karen something, she said it wasn't a big deal. Called it community service. He even had texts. It wasn't just petty anymore, it was criminal, organized, intentional. I turned everything over to the police. Footage, receipts, the guy's statement. Just like that, the sheriff's department reopened their file. Only this time, it wasn't about trespassing. It was criminal conspiracy. Karen had escalated, and so had I. The sheriff didn't waste time. 2 days after we handed over the evidence, a detective showed up at my site wearing mirrored sunglasses and a badge that swung slightly when he walked. His name was Detective Rivas, and he had the calm, annoyed energy of a man who'd rather be catching real criminals, but kept getting dragged into HOA hell. 0.5 Why am I 5 wire? I like you, I. You're the guy with the hotel, he said. Not a question. I nodded. You're the guy with the badge, he smirked. Let's talk about your local terrorist. We went over everything again. The sabotage, the camera wires, the graffiti, the concrete in the well, the guy Larry caught, and most importantly, the name he gave under interrogation. Karen Hudson. That's the magic word, Rivas muttered, flipping through a small leather notebook. You're not the only one who's had run-ins with her. Apparently, Karen already had a file. Complaints about harassment, questionable uses of HOA funds, and one case where she allegedly threatened to blacklist a family for painting their mailbox the wrong shade of beige. Nothing had stuck until now. Rivas took everything we had and promised to follow up. He didn't take long. A week later, I was at the lot reviewing supply deliveries when Travis came jogging up, out of breath, phone in hand. Dude, he panted, you are not going to believe this. He handed me his phone. On the screen was a blurry photo, apparently taken covertly by someone at the Charleston permit office. It showed Karen in full makeup and a blazer the color of mint toothpaste, handing a sealed envelope to one of the county's construction compliance officers, a guy named Barry Lynch. Barry had worked in that office for over 15 years, known for being quiet, punctual, and damn near allergic to controversy. The next day, Barry walked straight into the sheriff's department and handed over the envelope. Inside, $7,000 in 50s, unmarked, and a handwritten note from KH stating it was a gesture of appreciation to reconsider the Sawyer project. She didn't even have the decency to call it a donation. Just reconsider. Barry had worn a wire during the handoff, on advice from a friend at the sheriff's office. The entire conversation was recorded. Rivas called me that afternoon. She really thought she was in a movie, he said flatly. We've got her offering cash, suggesting he cite you for code violations, and even trying to throw in a free weekend at her beach house. She's toast. The arrest happened the following morning. It was early. I was sitting on the back of my truck sipping bad gas station coffee, watching workers install support beams when I heard the sirens. 2 unmarked cars and 1 patrol SUV rolled up outside Karen's house. She came out in a robe screaming about how this was all a mistake, how she had legal rights as a representative of the community. They cuffed her anyway. Local media showed up before lunch. Someone leaked the story. Maybe the county office. Maybe someone from the HOA who finally wanted out. Either way, the headline hit fast. Pelican Bay HOA president arrested for bribery, criminal conspiracy. Under it, a photo of Karen in the back of a cruiser. Hair still pinned up, sunglasses crooked. I thought that would be the end. But as usual, Karen had managed to drag everyone else down with her. Within 72 hours, the county opened a forensic audit of the HOA. Turns out nobody had seen financial records in over 7 years. No elections, no board minutes, and certainly no oversight. Karen had been approving all expenditures herself, including new furniture for her home, catered meetings that never happened, and what looked like a $12,000 expense labeled Community Morale Enhancement, which turned out to be a personal spa retreat in Asheville. The audit team found enough to freeze the HOA's bank accounts and suspend its charter pending further investigation. Residents started receiving letters from the county notifying them that HOA fees would be paused indefinitely while the board's status was evaluated. And suddenly, everyone who'd been too afraid to speak started talking. Neighbors who'd been fined for unapproved porch lights, putting up Halloween decorations in September, or hanging bird feeders started showing up with folders, receipts, and stories. Someone even claimed Karen had threatened to foreclose on their home over a handmade wind chime that clashed with the community's auditory palette. The woman had built a tiny empire on petty fear. Now it was collapsing brick by passive-aggressive brick. As for Karen, she made bail the next afternoon, but the damage was done. Everyone saw the footage, everyone heard the recordings, and most importantly, everyone realized the monster they'd been feeding all these years didn't have any real teeth. Just a loud voice and a letterhead. I went back to the lot that night, stood there alone, letting the ocean wind hit me in the face. It smelled like salt, wood dust, and the distant, delicious scent of justice. Then I turned and got back to work. The build wasn't finished yet, but Karen was. The first signs of collapse didn't come with explosions or headlines. They came in the form of silence. The HOA's official website, usually full of passive-aggressive notices and unsolicited seasonal guidelines, went offline one morning. The neighborhood bulletin board, once updated weekly by Karen's minions, sat untouched. No flyers, no warnings about improperly stored trash bins. Just a blank corkboard in the community center, slowly warping in the humidity. A week after Karen's arrest, the county released a preliminary audit summary, and it read like a manifesto of dysfunction. Over 7 years of missing financial records, dozens of expenditures with no receipts, more than 30 homeowner fines that had never made it into the association's actual account ledger. And the clincher, an email from Karen to her executive assistant, a position no one knew existed, instructing them to shred anything that looks boring or official. The community was furious. For the first time since I bought the property, neighbors who had previously ignored me or side-eyed my progress started stopping by the construction site. Not to complain, but to talk. Some apologized. Some asked if I'd testify when the class action refund case opened. One man, a soft-spoken retiree with a limp, said Karen once threatened to report him to the HOA compliance board because his wind chimes were too jangly. "I never even knew what that meant," he said. The floodgates opened. A Facebook group formed, Free Pelican Bay. HOA members demanded transparency. They started reviewing old meeting minutes, only to realize many had been fabricated. Votes never taken. Budgets never approved. Petty fines used to buy things like decorative consulting and community leadership retreats. By mid-month, the county issued a formal suspension of the HOA's operational authority pending legal resolution. Their nonprofit license was frozen. Their bank accounts locked. No more power, no more enforcement, and no more Karen. You'd think that would calm things down, but instead it sparked chaos. The kind of chaos that smells like long-delayed freedom. Residents began pulling down old HOA signs. One guy threw a block party just to grill hot dogs on a non-regulation smoker. It felt like the town was shedding a skin it hadn't realized was choking it. The HOA board, suddenly leaderless, scrambled to save face. They held a community town hall without Karen. Only 12 people showed up. Someone live-streamed the meeting. It mostly consisted of confused board members arguing over who was technically still in charge and whether they could legally use HOA funds to hire a new lawyer. Spoiler, they couldn't. Karen, meanwhile, had gone silent. Out on bail, but nowhere to be seen. Her house, the one she once held HOA potlucks in, had its shutters closed, the lawn overgrown. Rumor was she'd fired her attorney and was trying to represent herself. Classic Karen. One afternoon, I got a letter in the mail. It wasn't from the HOA, but from the Charleston District Attorney's Office. They were building a case not just for the bribery, but for fraud, misappropriation of community funds, and abuse of office. They asked for any documentation I had. I sent everything, emails, footage. The fake construction complaints. Even the laminated flyer she once taped to my fence warning about developer pollution. Travis read the full list of charges out loud a week later. Man, they're throwing the whole codebook at her. She deserves it, I said. Maybe, he said. But you've got to admit, she put up a fight. I shook my head. She didn't fight. She schemed. She lied. She tried to control people with fear and bureaucracy, and now it's all falling apart. And fall apart it did. By the end of the month, over 40 homeowners filed claims for reimbursement. Several had already stopped paying their dues, and no one was showing up to enforce anything. Contractors stopped responding to HOA board members. The board itself voted to dissolve, quietly without ceremony. No press release. Just a notice taped to the community center door that read, "Due to ongoing investigations and legal liabilities, the HOA Board of Pelican Bay hereby suspends all activity effective immediately." And just like that, the regime was over. No rules, no fines, no Karen. Pelican Bay had gone feral, and I'd never seen it look better. It took nearly 11 months, but when the final coat of paint dried on the west balcony railings, I knew it was done. The dune's edge opened quietly on a warm Friday morning in early September 2026, just as the tide was rolling in. No fanfare, no ribbon cutting, no influencers with drones. Just clean sheets, ocean wind, and the soft creak of new wood settling into old sand. 8 rooms. Every one of them with a view that made you forget your inbox existed. The crew had cleared out. Travis had finally stopped pacing, and even Hank the pit bull looked mildly impressed. I stood in the lobby that first morning, holding a cup of burnt coffee from our still-learning front desk intern, and stared at the wall across from the check-in counter. Framed there, behind glass mounted in oak, was a clipping from the Pelican Bay Coastal News. HOA president found guilty of fraud, bribery, and criminal conspiracy. Association dissolved. Underneath the headline was a grainy mugshot of Karen looking like someone had just explained cryptocurrency to her for the first time. Her eyes were wild. Her jaw clenched so hard you could almost hear her grinding what remained of her dignity into dust. According to court records, she'd taken a plea deal. 3 years probation, 500 hours of community service, and a lifetime ban from holding office in any registered HOA. I heard she'd moved inland, somewhere near Columbia, where the sand couldn't follow her. Beneath the newspaper clipping hung a brass plaque I'd had custom made. It read, "This property belongs only to those who respect ownership." Most people laughed when they read it. A few nodded solemnly. One older woman looked at it for a long time and muttered, "Damn right." Business started slow but steady. We weren't trying to become a party hub. No wedding bookings, no spring break packages. Just peace, air, and space to breathe. And that's what we got. Artists, couples, writers, overworked teachers, People looking to escape the noise. The exact opposite of what Karen used to bring. Every so often, a local would wander in and ask to look around. I never said no. Some of them told me stories about how the HOA had fined them for bird feeders, for hosting too many guests, for parking slightly crooked. One guy, a carpenter, said Karen once tried to ban hammocks for being emotionally unstable furniture. You couldn't make this stuff up. But my favorite visit came from a 10-year-old kid named Owen. He walked in with his grandmother one afternoon, marched up to the front desk, and said, "Excuse me, is this the Anti-Karen Hotel?" I almost spilled my coffee. His grandmother looked mortified, but I leaned down and said, "Kid, you have no idea." We gave him a souvenir shell from the property and a slice of leftover pie from the staff kitchen. He left holding his grandma's hand and waving like he was royalty. That night, as the sun dipped low over the dunes and cast everything in gold, I sat out on the upper balcony sipping something stronger than coffee. Travis joined me. We watched the horizon for a while, neither of us speaking. Finally, he said, "You ever think about how close she came to winning?" I nodded. "Every day." He tilted his head. "Would you do it all again?" I took a long sip. In a heartbeat. The wind picked up, carrying with it the scent of salt, the rustle of beach grass, and something else, something lighter. The sound of laughter, distant music, and maybe, just maybe, the echo of a very angry woman realizing no one cared what she thought anymore. Down by the fence line, a new wooden sign hung from 2 sturdy posts. Travis had carved it himself. It read, "No HOA beyond this point." Underneath it, in smaller letters, "You're free now." And for the first time since I bought that forgotten little wreck by the sea, I finally believed it.